Kevin, how about you? Are you a brave soul?
I'm great. I'm right here.
You're right here, okay. Okay. Good deal. I don't know if I can be as entertaining as Josh. It's overheard a few things there, but he was picking on you poor fellows pretty hard at times. That's good stuff. Or just out of curiosity, I'm curious who traveled the farthest to get here. Montana? No, okay. How about Yakima? That's pretty far away. By the, that's Camas? Okay, Florida. Alrighty. And then who here is involved with construction, either contractor or within the building phase, our folks? Okay, we have a couple shop teachers here. All right. And then what other questions for you guys? What are you hoping to learn, or what kind of questions do you have? I wouldn't mind hearing that before we get started. And then we'll circle back to some of this at the end if we don't cover it in our presentation. Anything you're hoping to learn, or anything, any expectations that? Okay, you want to build a timber frame house next year too, gathering information? Okay. Okay, you've already learned a lot. So if we left right now, you consider this success.
I have a customer that's looking for large timber frame
Okay,
entries.
perfect. Customer looking for some big timbers. Okay. The difference on what you guys are selling versus what we.
There's different, it's a different portion of the industry.
Okay. That Kevin?
I'm just curious more about, I would like to hear your story, the Aero timber frame story, the history of kind of how you got
Okay.
involved in this little bit that.
Okay,
That's it.
let's see how time goes. I don't want to make it about me.
Yeah.
Okay. So the do's and don'ts of timber framing for builders and contractors. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, we got 5 things here. First thing we're gonna talk about is gonna be post bases and post connecting systems to avoid. Okay, that's gonna be the first part. The second part is timber installation and handling. You've heard some from Josh how that works. We're going to give you our timber frame installation guide for people that are installing themselves. We have a printed copy. It's about, maybe 20 pages, kind of a smaller little booklet style. And we'll give you that to download. And Lucas, if you'll pass these out here. What you want to do to get the download is, there's a little slip of paper in there. And maybe we could get some pens. Josh, you want to bring the pens over? Right over on the table. Pass those out. But you're going to give your email to either Taylor or Lucas, and then we'll email you the download, okay? And as far as how many here are already ATF insiders? In other words, when we have a seminar, we get our timber framing magazine. Who sees, so you see the emails?
I don't get emails, I get the magazine.
Oh, you get the magazine, okay.
No email.
Oh, because you, so we'll have to get you set up, because you're missing out a little bit. We have a timber frame magazine we put out. Also, when you do your email, we're gonna do a book drawing for a solid book, for a hardcover book. And also, when you have this email, you can get access to our online flip book. And so Andrew, if you're like your customer, you could get access to this flip book and share that. And then you can kind of communicate, whatever. Even if you end up doing something and we're not involved, there's still a lot of information there that would help you out getting the right style, and how big, and that sort of stuff. Okay? And with this timber installation part of this presentation, we're going to go through it on a real high level, because you're all going to get that later and you can read through it at that point. Okay? And with timber framing, especially hybrid timber framing, there are 3 contractors that need to be communicated with as well. We're gonna go through that, and I'm asking you guys to help me predict which ones they are. And another three here is roofing enclosure systems. For the timbers, there's three main ways to get a roof over a timber frame truss in a roof system. We'll go through that and the pros and cons. And the last one is what's best for your client. Here we're going to talk about different levels of timber framing, from a lot of timbers to a little timbers, and maybe what kind of style your client is looking for. Really trying to figure out that good fit. And as a business owner, a good fit, I feel like, with employees and the team members and with clients, if I can get a good fit, that's the holy grail of business as far as I'm concerned. You do that, and your problems kind of just melt away like snow in the sun. They do. But if it goes the other way, your problems multiply like rabbits in the springtime. Okay. Oh, and as far as a good fit, here's a story that happened, true story. My uncle, that illustrates the importance of a good fit. My uncle was developing a piece of property and it needed to be logged. So he hired a logger to harvest the trees and clean up the property and move forward. And a couple weeks later, the logger calls him up. Okay, we got it about wrapped up. And my uncle goes out to the property and he's like, ooh, this is far from done as far as I'm concerned. And I think most people would have the tendency to dial up the logger and say, this isn't done, and go out there and walk them through it. But he had a different reaction. And I think it was a very wise reaction. What he did is he basically admitted to himself, okay, I made a bad hire. For me to bring logger A back out here, point out all the stuff that not happen with, and then have him make his attempt at doing it, that might have to go around 3-4 times to actually get done for my uncle. So he found someone, he did a better job hiring the second time. He got someone a little carefuler, got someone who would do the job to his level of finish. And I think he saved headache, time, and quite possibly money. Anyhow, that illustrates a good fit. Okay, you want to pass those out, Lucas? We have one other thing to pass out. This is planning guide. If, as far as getting things going in the right direction with everything timber framing, there's 10 steps here that you can use for yourself or for if you're helping anyone make decisions, trying to get their hands around what they're trying to build. This is a companion workbook to our book that we've written. So it's pretty hands-on. If you actually do the exercises, it's really helpful. Okay, post-based connecting systems to avoid. The first example I have here is post-setting concrete. It would seem pretty obvious to not have a nice timber post, just simply pour concrete around it or put tar paper around it or concrete. I've seen it done. And that is deferred pain with a capital D. It's gonna bite. It's just not good. And even the pole barns, this is an example of a pole barn with old pressure treating pole barns. That's very common to sink the post in the ground and put concrete around it. They have 50-year shelf life, approximately, right? And they can last longer, but pressure treating today is a different animal. Who here has experience with that? It does not last. So pole building, in my opinion, to do this with a pole barn is absolutely awesome. not the thing to do. So even with pressure treating, post in the ground just means short shelf life. Just really, it's best to avoid it. So that's kind of obvious, but it's worth restating. Here's another example of posts in the ground. I don't know if the county is still allowing this, but it's faster to throw a post in the ground than bring up concrete. And you see this on a lot of production homes. They would just simply put 4 straps and join a pressure treated post to a nice timber post, stick it in the ground, and then eventually build a box, around it and put stone on it. It covers everything. But they didn't have to go through the hassle of building up concrete. But again, not a good idea. And for the load, when this is being done, it's generally on small entries and that sort of thing. So load's not really a big consideration. And here's what you see a lot of with concrete poured up. So it's out of the ground. You want it an inch out of the ground, inch off the concrete by code. If the concrete is higher, you can go down to a half of it. But that's what code requires. Don't want to touch the concrete on the bottom, you want it clear. For years, we've preached this, that you have an air hole somewhere, high and low, so you get a little bit of airflow, because if you collect moisture down there and it's just trapped, it does this thing over time. And I feel like for anyone here who wants a business idea, you start specializing in fixing this kind of a problem. That's been done all over with no ventilation. And depending on the weather patterns of where that's at, there's going to be a market there for someone that's concrete cap for the stone's out here, right? And then there's just a little plug. And that's the way you want to do it. Another thing this does for you when you do concrete rather than post with a box is you're going to get lateral bracing. So you can brace off this and you'll see triangles formed off this a lot of times. And that the lateral bracing brings us to our last point about post bases. This particular project, I watched it being built years ago, probably 15 years ago. And they had a Simpson bracket. It was a little bit higher bracket, maybe through bolts 8 inches apart or so, but roughly pretty high. And they had 2x4s nailed up to the very last until they had to take them down to put the stone on. And I can imagine why everyone that's up there is like, oh, I would bet you have 3 to 6 inches of lateral movement here. The only thing holding this up is you might be getting, if you picture a 6x6 post with a hole here and here, with the strap like so, depending on how the straps were oriented, that could give you a little resistance for falling over. I think most of where getting ventilation in your hollow posts, keeping your posts clear of the ground. Doing that, it seems kind of obvious, but it puts you in the top tier of people building on the timbers. Any questions? Okay, proper handling and construction install. So this is the page out of the install guide that you're gonna get for a download. So I'm gonna let you go through most of it. The only things that I'm gonna point out here are this one, that is a tarp that is just kind of suctioned onto a pile of wood, is gonna sweat and cause problems, just like a post is not ventilated. Make sense? And then the other one that's really easy, happens easy, it still happens to this day. Piles of timbers are kind of like a table. Tables collect stuff, they're easy to put stuff down on. It say use sawzall blade, set it down, or a clip of nails that are not galvanized. Even if it's not raining, if there's dew forming at night, then come back in the morning and you have this lovely little imprint of a clip of nails in black. And if that should happen to you, there's a product called oxalic acid. It will take the black out. The drawback is it starts the deterioration process of wood. It's kind of breaking it down. Better to keep it clear. Okay, the rest you can read on your own. This here again, I'm gonna let you read it on your own. There's a list of handy tools. Okay, yes,
Oh, so by the way, we have a little slip, Bert may have mentioned this,
Yeah.
in the folder.
yeah,
That you can put your email in, we're gonna draw for a hat. And then if you would like the install guide for a little extra info, put that in. But we've got a par giveaway going on.
okay,
Shirts or hats, so do you
yes,
mind,
Par,
do you mind if I interrupt?
go ahead.
Okay, Par Lumber has some extra gifts for you guys. And we've got a certain amount of hats as well as shirts. I'm not sure the sizes. They're all large. They're all large. Anybody, does anybody wear a large? You do? John, Matt? Whoa, bad.
Yep,
You got a large?
Yep.
Okay, why don't you take a t-shirt? I am dropping hats left and right. You get a hat? Thank you. Anybody else
You
with
got
a
a shirt?
large?
How about a shirt?
We got largest over here. Thank you to Par Lumber for donating these. Any other larges? All right, we got some hats. Who would like a hat? Anybody who would like a Par hat? Right here. All right, anybody else? Any, Jake? Right, anybody else for a Par hat? We got two left. Right there. Anybody else for a Par hat?
one going, one more,
One more.
going once.
One more, all right. And then we got a couple large Par shirts up here.
Just set it back there, you
All
bet.
right, sounds good. Thank you, guys. And thanks to Par Lumber. Thanks
Yeah,
to Par
thank
Lumber.
you, Par. Imagine they did that after Josh just right. Oh,
Par's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin just supplied me with material for a home project after years of not really talking, and I've been out of the framing game for a while. Good job, Kevin, you did just like the old days, didn't miss a beat. Okay, I was gonna say here, here's a list of tools that are handy, we put together for someone installing some of our kits, and that's in the guide as well, we won't go through them here. And this is kind of a cool system, I'd like to share it with you. As far as, I used to, when years ago, we would, this might be timber A, this might be timber B, and we were labeling timbers. But the guy working with me came up with a pretty good idea. He says, hey, why don't you just label the joints? And then every joint has a home. If you find the R1, you have it on the post, you have it here, R4 here, find that on the tenon. As long as you're paying attention and not sleeping, you really can't screw it up. We have thought about using offset tenons that don't work anywhere else, and we'll probably screw those up too, so. But anyway, that's what you'll see with one of our kits. And then one little tip here, putting a beam on top of a post, you have 3 items you have to guide into holes is challenging, and it's more challenging when you have to have somebody's hand here holding this and guiding it. One trick is this is a 1-inch hole here. If you put something smaller diameter, say a 1/2-inch threaded rod or rebar, preferably something that isn't going to be black marks if it gets rained on, right? But that would leave room to go back and forth. Then you can just have the post braced with somebody holding it. And as the beam comes down, then this is right there, it's ready to adjust. You start to wiggle them in and get the tenons in, and then it drops on, and it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying. And Josh, I overheard Josh talking about pounding on pegs. If there is a peg that is, the one trick is to put a socket over the peg, and you whack on it, and it's not going to mushroom out as fast. It'll still take a beating, but generally you cut this off 1/4 or 1/2 or each proud. Anyway, and of course, kind of goes without saying to protect the wood, get a piece of wood to whack on when you're really going to go. One little professional trick I learned from one of my guys is that if you don't have to just wail on a piece and really move it, you got kind of a medium hard hit, and you happen to have a knot it's close to where you want to hit in the direction you want to go, you can hit on that knot fairly hard and you don't leave a mark. And it's kind of handy when you don't have to have one hand holding a board or someone else doing it. Just tick, 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 and it goes right over. So that's not in the book. You'll have to write that one down.
No extra charge for that one.
No extra charge. Okay, this says installing pegs, but this is part that's down lower on the sheet. And this is not here for you guys tonight right now because I want to teach you how to install corbels. The big point here is this. We go back on a lot of jobs. We try to talk people out of having wood past the bark, but it does have a really nice rustic architectural feel. And it's kind of poking out into nothing, right? What we generally do is we'll see this on a plan or people want to do it. We'll generally make this piece bigger so you get more wood presence and tuck it behind the fascia. And you can kind of get some of that rustic feel. It's not as good, but it's just never going to have a water problem. It's tucked under the roof. So that's the point here. If you do have this, do what it takes to convince your owners or clients or whatever to get metal on it. It's way up there. No one's ever going to maintain it properly with stain or whatever you need, right? It's not going to happen. So that's that point. Okay, before we move on to this, the piece on the install guide there. See if I can regain more of this tracking. Yeah, I think we've covered everything there. Okay, so with the timber frame package, there's 3 subcontractors in the building process that need to be communicated with and where most problems will come. Does anybody care to hazard a guess? Who might that be? Probably not the carpenter. I'll give you a hint. Electrician, they are involved. They're not one of the key players. Anyone else?
I'm gonna go framers, concrete guys, roofers.
Framers, concrete guys, roofers. 2 out of 3.
Bad.
Not bad. Roofers don't, but if we replace that with masons, that, and it's a different reason. I'll go through why. Okay, so the reason this right here is typical shop drawing, and we have three numbers that we work, three drop dead numbers we work with. It's really simple, the width, the height, and the depth. Three numbers that we just find, you drop dead if you don't get them, have a hard time. What happens, like this is an entry or pavilion here, with the footprint of the house, generally, if there's a change to accommodate making the timbers better, it goes back to the designer, they change the footprint, everything rolls smooth. When it's just a post, and especially if somebody comes to us and permits are already in progress, or maybe they even got permits, well, the posts are easy to move as well. And so many times, the imbalances in timber design that we see have to do with posts that are too tight together and the roof's too high and it's kind of tall and gangly, or whatever the reason. Posts are easy to move to create aesthetic beauty. And so we'll do that. The builder likes it, the owner likes it, everyone's cool with it. But now we just have to maintain that communication chain. Doesn't seem too tough, but it is. It really is. What has happened in the past is builder can get busy and kind of just flake it off and whoops, forgot to tell the concrete guy. Or the builder communicates well with the concrete contractor. And at the time of the pour, you got Billy Bones out there and boss is off hunting. You can't get a hold of him. He's got the permit set. He's got these papers from ERGO with some foundation marks on it. I mean, what's he gonna do? Nobody can. They get after him. Too bad if he goes after the marked up red set. And so that's happened as well. That's why that's a problem. And if we're drawing the plans completely, we'll go back and change them. So then that settles that. But we're doing other projects and things do happen. So tracking the post bases outside the footprint of the house is really something to pay attention to. This right here, achieving the full look with the timbers, I'll get into how it kind of processes out, but the mason and the carpenter, the framer, will generally, they're in there, it's time and money and they're moving. A lot of times you'll see the house that has 1 foot overhangs and go to the timber frame, which has kind of got big presence and looks like it's got a military haircut with short tails, but hey, the framers are rolling along, it's 1 foot everywhere else. Bang, 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 moving. On this example, I'm going to show you there's a tail that's too long. It doesn't happen often, but it does. And so paying attention to overhang sizes is really important to make sure that your framer is on the same page with that. And in the post bases, you'll see further on through this whole presentation, there's a lot of time and energy put into sizing the post bases right for mass, for height, for the whole thing. And it can really create beauty getting that Goldilocks sweet spot. I'll just move on here to show you. Okay, so this is a home we did quite a few years ago. And the garage dropped when we put it in the 3D model. There was more height here, and I don't remember just what our challenges were for the entry. I know we pulled it out more and made it more dramatic to where it really commanded presence on the entry. One of the things we did was drop the stone all the way up here. And it came out further. And the plan too had these overhangs that kind of jogged around the timber. They created like a little home for the timber there. Okay. During the building process, the little jog got dropped. Oops. And that piece here didn't get done. And so it doesn't look like this roof can flap its wings and fly away, but a little bit more length. Right? And then if you look at the stone columns, they got dropped and they got quite a bit bigger. I'll show you here on the next photo. They're really on for me, when I had kind of this picture in my head and worked with all this, when I seen the real project walking through it for the first time, holy cow, Those are gargantuan. And I can see how it happened. There's such a thing called decision fatigue in the building process. You guys ever heard that? There's so many decisions going through there that it's tough to put the proper time into all of them. But a takeaway for you here is you can learn to develop a sense of what decisions are going to really affect the overall look and feel, be bigger things, and develop that sixth sense and know when to tap the brakes. I can't speak for other designers, but I'm pretty sure they would feel the same way. If you're making a decision that's going to affect the original idea, and it may be better, but for us, take the time to call us up. We'll model the stone for the whatever height you're thinking of, so you can make an informed decision. In this case, if I was the builder, you're dealing with tight schedules, moving targets, people not showing up. He's standing out there with a mason. Mason said, "Hey, boss, we put it up here and don't go all the way up. We can save you lots of money." And okay, well, saving money's good. How big should we make them? Oh, I don't know. How about this? Looks good to me. I mean, that unfold and move on. I mean, you got to make decisions and move, right? But if you develop a sixth sense for when to tap the brakes, call your designer, call your professional. I'm sure they're going to be glad to help. It's not just it's stone. It's not just overhangs. There's changes come up, and a lot of times the changes that come up later are good. They make it better, but might as well be an informed decision. You got 3D modeling, do it. Okay, now we're to the roof enclosure systems. I'm going to go through and tell you about all three, and then we'll do a comparison. Lucas, you want that now or at the end?
Oh,
Let's do it at the end.
all right.
You got to collect all the emails, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yep. So we can do this for you, Lucas. I'll throw you a bone. Why don't you pass your emails down to that end, and Lucas will collect.
In a hat, and then we got some giveaways. Nice job, guys. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling with this here. So here's one way to get a roof frame. That is to have your timber framing, whether it's a truss or a rafter, you have decking over the top, plywood. And then for an entry, that's where it stops. But if you have insulated space, heated space underneath, generally what happens is you have a taller fascia board, a layer of foam, another layer of plywood with screws that connect the plywood to the deck. It's just screw the sides to the same length. Or you could do, say, like 2x8 sleepers on top of your decking. Then you put foam in there. And that can be another way to do that. So that's just with decking on top with foam above. All right. Something similar is using SIPS panels. Everyone here familiar with SIPS? Styrofoam and plywood, and that could just screw right to the top of the rafters, and you can be done with it. You can't even order these with wood paneling of your choice, so that you don't have to have paneling later. Right to the top of the roof. Okay. And the third system, and this picture here is in our install guide, by the way. It's just showing the process to get these posts cut the right height, so that because things change in the field, and if the framer's installing it, we wanted to show them how to get there, so they're not asking us, "What height do I put the beam at?" What distance is that? Go out on a limb, start doing math for it. But so here's the point. Here is the other way: that timber's down, you have a hand cut rafter. A lot of times you'll hold a space between there so that you can get your paneling above the timbers. The other way to do it is just to have your paneling butt into the timbers. And then you have your 2x rafters, or you could even have a scissor truss. Been done before, where logistics or money savings makes sense. But the point is the timber's underneath, and you've got some space here, And now let's go for a comparison. So we all clear on the three major ways of covering roof. Okay. So here we have the three systems with these two systems right here. The biggest drawback is the thinking you have to do in advance. And any thinking that you have to do 6 months from now, it takes a lot more horsepower, a lot more work, and your probability of getting the decision right decreases. The longer you can put off a decision, more information comes in, more time you've had to think about it, the easier it is. And that's a big deal. That's probably the biggest con to these two systems. This one demands a longer lead time, just really through the roof, and the SIP panels themselves can be expensive. It is strong, it's light, and it does not have thermal bridging. You don't have any wood going through that. It's like a refrigerator. There's nothing going through that to the outside. Like you see a roof in the snow, you start seeing where the rafters are. The rafters are leaking energy. That's thermal bridging. That's where you're seeing that. Okay, and if you do the timber frame and the decking above it, the big strong point to this is to do a cross section here looking from the side. Okay, got your decking running across. You're never going to have a shrinking joint or anything to deal with right there. The decking's nailed right down to it, good to go. As opposed to this system, the biggest drawback with framing with regular rafters or trusses is you have your timber here, and you can have your tongue and groove just stick over the side like this, but you're going to have a gap there because framing and the timber framing doesn't always line up. You can have a rafter with a crown or a truss. And if you were to butt your sheetrock or your tongue and groove to the side of the beam shrinks and you get something here, and of course you're dealing with perfect insulation, right? The sheetrock with zip strip does pretty good. It's just to beat a caulk, but generally kind of just plan on getting some sort of low profile piece of trim. We've supplied it for jobs that matches. It works out pretty good. It's the biggest con to this system. On the plus side for this system is you can roll just like you normally do with all of the subs. You don't have to think about your lighting and sprinklers or anything like that way in advance because you have access from the bottom. You get your roof on quick, and then there's no extra expense from subcontractors. Andrew, you were an electrician at one time, and dealing with SIPs, they have little channels and stuff, but you're like, electricians are like, just wait, how's this work? Whatever. The plumber's like, okay, well, yeah, we'll do the job, but you have to throw something in for, it's gonna take more time, and you're not sure how much. Whereas this right here, this system right here can just roll along and everyone goes along fine. The one thing I would say is if you're gonna use this system, copy the other two and use spray and foam. If you use blow-in or fiberglass, there just tends to be a lot of leakage right here for heating. And I invite one member of the audience, shameless plug, Spencer at stand up. So he just did a bunch of spray foam for me. And we tell all of our clients around timber framing, use spray foam. It just really does a lot. One particular client, pretty big home, he had a heating cooling bill of $3,000 a month. So he tried to save money going with it. And you can do a flash and back where you just get the foam to seal and then so there's ways to mitigate some of the costs, but I think it's money well spent. Okay, we're in the last section here. We talked about a good fit earlier. What's best for your client? So we're going to talk about different levels of timber framing, how much somebody might want in their home, to show you some examples. And also, as we go through there, we're just going to have a little educational journey as far as things to avoid, the do's and don'ts with timber design and kind of that sort of thing. With timber design, it's kind of two fail buckets, or if you want to call them success buckets. There's the piece that everybody sees that is like tactile, it's in your face, you see it when it's out of balance, you know. But the unseen beauty, what we do with our timber design, especially with posts on an exterior, they just don't have the visual mass to support visually and look right. And then they're overcorrect a lot of times with posts that are too big. But we're gonna talk about awkward volume, last minute timbers, and off the shelf connectors. Okay,
What are these? What are all these examples?
they're the don'ts.
Don'ts,
They're the don'ts. You could call them sins,
cardinal sin.
cardinal sins, timber design. Okay. This first example here, I was driving in a subdivision and seen this, took a picture. Just, it's not bad per se, but it could be a lot better. And so to balance this, somebody with a professional eye and a passion for doing this, I never have modeled this, so I don't know if this is gonna work, but here's some things that I would definitely try to do. First order of business is this piece of garage here. It just kind of feels like it might fall on its forehead, a little top heavy, okay? So some things to try would be to lower this roof itself. Just kind of tuck that gutter back here with a little roof step. And I would probably start the arch higher up and give it a little bit more arch. I think that's just my gut feeling of where to go. And the big thing to do here would be to take these knee braces and reverse the angle. You can see it's out further than it is down. So if the knee brace came down lower, it's gonna create just like the knee braces as they are, like a skinny post. You put the knee braces lower, it creates a feeling of stability and just kind of balance. And if you wanted to further accentuate that, you could simply bring out these posts here in the front of the garage out a little further to where the side profile might look like we got half the post up against the wall and that comes out a little further, right? In the garage. And that would give you more visual weight. Okay. Over here, this is almost too expansive. It's like trying to greet all of your visitors at once when they come to your house. One thing that I think would have a high probability of success is to throw in a post, probably a little taper on the outside, because it just gives it's a way to Misdirection, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, magicians use misdirection. Mhm. But it's a little bit of a misdirection to create a feeling of stability, just a slight angle to the outside. But if you had a separate roof here that was dedicated to bringing you to the front door, and then this roof over here, I think something good to try would be oops. Did I do that?
You did.
Yep.
So this is the backboard. Come on back.
Why did you do the drawing?
All right, let's do a little bit of a drawing. So we've got some names
Okay.
up here. Mix them up a bit, all the same size, all the same shape. Kurt, why don't you grab one out of there? Don't look. One of them.
Okay, I'll grab one screen. I can't see it.
What's an email?
Okay. Okay, Rad Doggos Jones.
Radagast Jones. All right. Number one.
Okay, Radagast Jones.
How did you pronounce it initially?
Well, I don't know.
This is written by Bert.
Oh, it wasn't just me, I had a lot of help.
Well,
Okay.
it did, but second edition
Yeah, Lucas helped a lot on it, it really came out good.
and Taylor.
It did, yep.
He did the bulk of the design.
Okay. M. Boomala.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not mine, I just like that.
Yes. The rock star of this.
Um,
Yeah, there you go. Otherwise, we do, with your email, if you're not already a part of it, we're gonna send out an email where you can, read the entire thing online.
Yep,
And then, of course, we'll sell it to you super cheap here if you do like the hardcover.
if you do like the hardcover, it's normally 47, but a $20 bill, get it out the door for you, just start cost. Okay, so one thing that, some sort of a little roof that maybe, it could be a gable, it could be a Dutch hip with roofing here. And this post, I would probably make the stone lower over here so that this is for sure a supporting piece and your eye is drawn to this at first, visual hierarchy. And when you do something like this, you have a dedicated thing for the front door, kind of this side piece that accentuates everything with a place for a bench, and it's obviously not, you're not confused. I mean, this is where you walk up. And if it further needed rustic factor, you could see if you had enough room for a little truss up in the gable. That's effective a lot of times. But those are some things we tried and just make it even better. Okay, I might be going on the blank again. Hopefully not. See, is this the X here? Yeah. No, here we are. I think I got it. All right. Okay, we talked about off-the-shelf fasteners. And these aren't, if this is a home that's budget-driven, and that you don't want to rock the boat getting too fancy in that, but there are better ways to connect. You don't have to just grab something from Home Depot. That just kind of kills it. You can bring the timber frame game in our area up and figure out some ways to get screws and plugs and different things for the loads that these generally have. That's just something that people know and they do, but clients probably appreciate not having to look at that. Okay, and in our book, there's a chapter called Avoiding the Hail Mary Approach. And basically what it says is that designers and clients are pretty tired by the time they get to the end of their blueprints. From bathroom sizes to closets to all this. There's a lot of decisions. There's decision fatigue that sets in. And so the architect or the designer will generally throw in some beams, make some notations. Nobody cares at that point. Just, yeah, we'll figure something out. The engineer will engineer something to size. The ball's kind of rolling. And by the time they get to this point, it's kind of like a quarterback backing up in the pocket, and here these hulking linebackers trying to schedule money. Throw it up, framer, fix it. And it sometimes it lands, most times it doesn't. Okay? This is an example of drop paths. I'm guessing that these timbers were just installed with top plate. They didn't think about the roof coming down, and so they've made up for it with a little pony wall and fat rafters they then have to transfer for a barge. And then as far as the aesthetic pieces of it, the metal is a little bit loud. And if these beams were lifted, just brought out to just have 2x6 rafters through the whole thing, there's no need to be big. That would be really clean, bringing that. These posts, a person might try a little bevel and a taper on the outside. Just really looks good with small increase. And if you wanted to further get a little bit of artistic piece in there, this should be bigger in the first place, but you could taper that out. It shouldn't be too big, but get something that tapers there. And it could really look clean, just a nice, simple, solid, clean. He was just having fun, but it doesn't fit context. And that's one of our big things is fitting context. And that's an example of overpowering. That also looks like a fun way to lose money if we were doing it, but he was getting paid by the hour, so he was covered. Okay, and here we're going to talk about balance, visual hierarchy. This is a remodel we did quite a few years ago. All the posts are on the same spot. They're bigger, and V-braces have been added, you can see. But there's a couple things that were done that were kind of key points to this. One is, this is the bathroom behind here, so I got permission to play with this window size. That was made smaller. So this is an example of creating the canvas of the space to make the timbers look good. You can imagine if you try to come out without moving that window, come out here with a low roof, have to try to do something with not a lot to work with. See the difference in pitches here, right? So that's like a big win right there when you can create that space. And also visual hierarchy. These ridges right now are all the same. So one of the things we did is we just built out some false walls here, made a bigger span, and made that roof bigger. Then we could put in the timber thing here and just the corbels there. And you can see how that, I'll show you the next picture here. When you pull up and you see this, there's no question where your eye goes first, right? And one of the things that happened, we did such a good job here, the garage is just a blank slate. So we figured something out for the garage because it was just a flat note. Somebody singing off key. And that was our part of it, relatively simple. A few timbers, but here with the big, just this false gable there, simple enough to frame on. And then of course we did something on the garage, that was fine. They pulled their garage cars up there. That was, then that all kind of flows and speaks, right? So that's an example of balance, not too big, not too small, kind of that Goldilocks sweet spot. Here's an example. I talked about making a home bigger, like raising the roof pitch to create space again for the entry or the timbers that are going on here. And the roof pitch happened in part because of creating mass, but also because people wanted rustic. They're looking kind of for a craftsman rustic blend. Craftsman's homes will typically have a real low pitch. Rustic homes, a very steep pitch. So this is kind of in between. You can see this, the roof is steeper. So that was the other part of this was by creating it steeper, it lifted the body of this whole roof. And you can do that and you have more visual weight because the timbers are going to have weight just by being timbers alone, and then depending on how much you have and how big. So then once we had that, then we could have a little bit of space. The stone went up higher. And originally these were drawn with a small taper, but they got axed in the budget process, which I understand, it still turned out good. So we're talking that basically stayed here and kind of got a little steeper like so. But one of the big things about prepping the canvas is in this picture, this here, especially in the 3D model, when we go from it tucks back in here, then you have this kind of flags up, and it kind of flows by having this lower piece, it smooths the transition to that higher peak and it brings you up there. So it's not it's just like right there in your face. A few more examples of capturing beauty. And there's the overview. You can see the timbers that we put in it's not like we're doing the whole house, but we're really using laser-like focus to really get that look and feel that people want. And in fact, with our designs, in any professional, I think will tell you this, generally you go until it gets over pimped out, you back up. And I've kind of learned that less is more generally. And here's an example of kind of the higher level. That second one was the one we just at. There's a lot of timbers there, but there's people who would like more. And the design process here, this was originally designed to be more intimate and cozy, but they wanted a nicer, bigger, a little bit nice entry. We had big posts that were tapered. Part of his thing was Timberline Lodge. He really liked that. So that was kind of something we're going with for sizing timbers and that sort of thing.
Have you ever done anything?
Well, now that you mention it, Lucas. Okay, so Timberline Lodge, that's First project we did, I went into it scared. It was in 2012 and a commercial project, and the guy that is Catworks, they was bid it anyway, and so went into it with all the paperwork and all that. It was I lost a few hairs on that, but it ended up being okay. But if I wouldn't have been scared, I lost my shorts. I can tell you that's just how it would have went.
What'd you do?
It's the lodge, if you're going off 26 and you hit Timberline Road, there's a gazebo there. It doesn't look very big, but it's 40 foot tall. And in fact, I remember when we were bidding this thing, the architect, for whatever reason, put it on a small scale. And so it wasn't a 1/4 inch scale, I think it's an 1/8 inch scale. And you're looking at a scale, but still there, it creates a disconnect. And then we finally got it in the model and put a person in the model. That's what we're bidding. It was kind of wild. But anyway, that particular job had a unique lateral bracing system. There's a report, if any of you are interested, we can send you on that. There's a little story about Timberline Lodge, how it came to be. Since then, we did some wayfinding signs. Since then, we've just recently helped with their new entry. They've got up there. Cool project. And then we've done 2 things in the airport. There's one that we did guys are aware of the big airport remodel. So we did one 8 years ago, 10 years ago. We did a Timberline Lodge store. And then that's getting moved. So we did a new one just recently here. And we had the honor of bringing a 18 by 20 by 28 free of heart timber through the metal detector.
I was there.
Yep. 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock at night, whatever it was.
Good story.
Not gonna fit and carry on, nope. So here's, you can see there's a lot of timbers, and this is a higher level of timbers as far as that goes.
So on that one there, FYI, those front posts on that front porch, how big do you think they are? Any guesses? First of all, they're tapered, so the bottom of those posts are bigger than the top. They taper from 16 by 16 at the base to a 12 by 12 at the top. What's crazy is the 16 by 16, and you look at it, it doesn't look too big.
Its size and its context there, and there's a bigger size going on with everything, so it rolls and it fits pretty nice. Okay. So gonna ask you guys, if you're working with some people, and whether it's with timbers or whatever they're at, building a home, doing a project for them, what are some ways you can find out where they're at? And the reason I ask this is because I've witnessed this with myself when I have a buying decision. Countless people that come in and talk about their projects and what their intentions are. And I've come to the realization that nobody really knows what they want. And the reason for that is when you think you know what you want, you only have a piece of your education. As you move forward, more information comes in, and then you modify your plans as you get smarter, right? And so somebody coming in thinking they want a real nice home, you know, depending on where prices are and that sort of thing can change. And other people we've seen come in and they're holding their cards real close, thinking they're gonna, but in reality, if they're honest with themselves, they've got another 50% more they're gonna end up spending to get what they want. So how do you, what's some ways you can figure out like where someone you're dealing with, what they really want? I'm just kind of curious, because we wrestle with this all the time, right? So we've got,
You gotta talk to them.
got to talk to them,
Communication.
communication. Lots of conversation,
And draw pictures.
draw pictures. Mhm. That's direction, yes.
You gotta talk to them enough in a way to get them to trust you to open up a little bit. You gotta get them to open up.
Mhm. And Andrew just said, drill down on what you're saying. But sure you see just nothing, the path from point A to point B is never linear. You're zigzagging all over and false steps. And how often do you see mission creep? Where you start off with, you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, but then it changes, you do a bigger project. Yeah. Mhm. Anyway, so with that, you know, that, it's really a thing as far as for clients that fit us well, we're on a mission to find people that fit, projects that fit. It's not everybody. But when somebody has a project that is design driven rather than cost driven, that's a green flag for us. And if we get a recommendation from you guys, whatever, that's, if you bring somebody in, that's gonna be a good fit and you'll share in the good, the warm glow of the success. We had one particular builder we had done work with, and so I'm really surprised that he didn't get us on board earlier. He decided, okay, the budget, he read his people wrong. He decided that the budget was tight. And they had the framers put something together, and the lady of the house was unhappy. She went online, started searching, she found us, and called us. And then come to find out that this particular builder had done work with us before. And so you can imagine her reaction that, Mr. Builder, you've done work with these people, you knew about them, and now we have this. Don't you care about me? No, it just was a bad deal. So he really fell on his sword, so to speak, when he didn't read his people right. Anyway, that's that piece of it. Here's our recap. Do we have any questions? We covered the code spaces, we talked about the install, the contract communication, roofing enclosure system, and then what's best for your client. As far as timber framing goes, you've got a little peek behind the screens of what we do, what's a good fit, that sort of thing. Was there any questions that we missed, or have we covered it all? Or any questions you guys have that have come up?
Some of your gussets, hardware.
Yes?
You design that, you have that custom made for each job.
So the gussets on our hardware, metal connectors, that is an interesting point. If you want to get down to brass tacks, timber framing uses wood pegs, post and beam uses metal connectors. That's the kind of the definition. There are people who like metal connectors. In fact, I've seen a picture here. It's actually the one, I think, back by it may be, well, there's the scissor truss, but I thought there was one that was, here we are, the centuries right here. This one right here, that's cedar wood. We do use cedar, but you gotta use big stuff to make it work. This particular gentleman had a metal fab shop, and he loved the look of metal. It's a lot of metal on a small truss, right? And this was back in,
He kind of liked wood, but really liked metal.
yes. And, that was about, it was about $20,000. We only had 5 trusses. But you got double plates on both sides, and bolts and the powder coating. And I think he had 20 grand in just the metal, and this was back in 06 or 08. And that is another question that it took me a long time to figure out. People would ask, well, how much do I save if I use metal? And it's reversed. And I was in business doing timber framing for about 3-4 years before I figured out that the metal, even though the cuts are simpler, costing me more. And the reason for that is because you've got the powder coating, you've got the extra cost, and you have to get all these drawings up to the fab thing, and then you have to protect them when you transport them, all the foam, all this stuff, and you're using tape on your tweaking them in and whatnot, or going back, and because you're gonna chip things when you tighten nuts. Just the whole thing really takes a lot longer. And there's actually quite a bit of quantity when you go a piece on both sides. And if you should opt for knife plates on the inside, only got one piece of metal, but there's a ton of labor dealing with the knife plate that's buried inside of all this wood. So the metal doesn't cost more. If people like the look, then that's what we go for. And you can see some people do. Okay, cool. Do we have anything else to cover, Lucas?
Timber framing in general in 2023. Tell us about it.
Oh, Kevin wanted a little story too, story time.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. So just real quickly, I was framing contractor, started in '95. Had framed for my father before that and worked for a guy who did general contracting. And he was an old school builder, did a lot of the work himself. They're kind of interesting to learn all about that. But so I've been on my own framing for about 9 years when a client asked me to do some timber framing on a project he had. It didn't amount to a whole lot. And I said, well, what's timber framing? And he explained it to me and, oh, okay, interesting. So let me think about it. Went down to the library that night, found some books on it, kind of fell in love with it. And then once you're aware of something, you can kind of see more of it, and it starts to grow from there. And that's the nutshell story, Kevin.
Didn't you take off to go over to Europe somewhere for a while to practice your trade?
Yeah, I did go over to Europe. I lived there for a year. It was more of a cultural language adventure than for the building. And Kevin, that's interesting. We did Bethany Vineyards. We did a project, and the newspaper was out there. They took some footage of when we were setting this big truss and whatnot. And the reporter wanted in the worst way to tie what I had learned back to the old country. I'd been there and learned it from my ancestors. And she made about 3 or 4 runs to get that tie in, and I just didn't give it to her because it wasn't true. But she wanted it in the worst way. So maybe you know this lady. And then as far as timber framing today, thanks for the reminder, Lucas. It's part of the reason we do this is timber framing has been in revival since the 70s, and we've learned a lot from the books and the old carpenters and things that are out there, the Timber Framers Guild. And so it feels kind of cool to put on these seminars and kind of help push that wheel a little bit. And hopefully you have used your time well tonight. You've learned something that's going to move the needle, making timber framing better for you and your clients and anything you got in mind. And we're good.
Where did that name come from?
Aero timber framing. So it was aero framing before aero construction. Back in the day when I started, having an A for the yellow pages was critical, right? And so we were scheming on names and whatnot. There was already a Sarkin construction, and I had the hobby and still have the hobby of shooting traditional bow and arrow just kind of for fun. I hadn't really hunted with it and whatnot. And somebody joked about setting up nails and shooting them in with the bow, driving the nails with the bow. And then, hey, hell, well, couldn't find any reason not to, and that's where that came from. Yeah, it turned out to be a good love. Really did. Okay, well, I think we're there. Give yourselves a round of applause. You've been a great audience. We've got some food to consume, and stuff, and if you have questions or want to just chat with each other, or have questions for Spencer, we're here for a while, whatever works. All right, thanks.
Good stuff. Good stuff.